Good evening. Welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your regular host, Greg Thompson, as we get together today for Combine Day 2 recap. Today we had our offensive linemen and running backs. If you're joining us today, again, come on, check out what we have going on over at cover1.net. Just awesome work from everybody. Draft breakdowns, everything happening. Tons of updates. It's a great time in the Cover One premium Slack channel, being able to talk through everything going on and everything that we have, running around, watching the combine together and talking back and forth. Eric sharing all kinds of videos and breakdowns as we're doing it, talking through players about, hey, who should we pay attention to? Where do these things matter and why? It's a ton of fun. So come on over, check it out. Tonight, we had the offensive line and running backs. We'll start with the big guys first. On the outside, we'll do tackles first. The top-end guys all look great. Obviously, today was Tristan Wirf's day from an offensive line standpoint. Just an unbelievable performance. Set the all-time record at 36.5-inch vertical and a 10-foot 1-inch broad jump. Ran a 4.86 40 with a 1.69 10-yard split. Those explosion drills in that first 10 yards matter for offensive linemen. So you'll hear me talk about the 40 time, but that 10-yard split does matter. The top end guy. So obviously Wirfs was phenomenal. I think anyone who was wondering if he was going to need to play guard, that kind of foot quickness and explosion, I think shows he's going to be just fine at tackle, either the right side or the left side. He's got plenty of flexibility, played both. Certainly a top end prospect. Mekhi Becton was phenomenal. 6'7", 364 pounds, and ran a 4.1 or a 5.10 with a 1.77 10-yard split. That's pretty impressive. Really crazy long arms. Just a really impressive athlete for as big as he is. 364 is hard to carry well, but really looked good. And they obviously talked about some of the comparisons. Daniel Jeremiah compared him to Trent Brown, and he really does match up really well. Both of the other top 4 tackles, Jedrick Wills and Andrew Thomas from Georgia, were solid, not spectacular. I thought Wills moved really well in the drills, so the testing was fine, but in the drills he looked really good. So all 4 of them are there. I could see any of the 4 of them going first, but after the impressive performance Wirfs had today, he certainly won this portion of that effort. There was a lot of talk about an offensive tackle top 5, and Josh Jones was supposed to be the athlete of the group and really didn't test all that well. So still has nice movement on film and is, I think, still in the running as a first-round guy, but maybe a little disappointing for a guy who was supposed to, one of his calling cards was being a higher-end athlete. He looked okay and moved all right. I didn't think he looked special. On the other hand, a guy who was competing with him for maybe that 5th offensive tackle spot was Austin Jackson. Ron's bringing it up in the chat here. I thought he moved really well, looked smooth in the drills. A 1.73 10-yard split is really good, shows good explosion. Out of some of the later round guys that, flashed to me that I made notes on, Alex Taylor out of South Carolina State, tallest guy, longest arms in the draft, ran pretty well. Ezra Cleveland out of Boise State, I thought looked pretty good. 30 bench reps with those long arms is a lot of power, and he ran a 4.9 340. So looked pretty good, and they joked about how he took reps at tight end at Boise State and even had a couple jet sweep handoffs in that formation. So just an impressive athlete. Matt Pert out of UConn was a guy who you couldn't help but notice at the Senior Bowl, and he just looks like a phenomenal athlete. Looks like Tyron Smith from Dallas, and that kind of athletic build with literally no belly whatsoever is chiseled like a V at offensive tackle. So looked really good, long, fast, moved well. He's the kind of guy that if Buffalo were to snag a guy late day 2, early day 3 to be a developmental guy, say behind Ty and Secchi, I could see some of those names: Alex Taylor, Ezra Cleveland, Matt Pert. Those are the kind of names I could see in that ballpark, being able to develop, not playing maybe year 1, but let's say they did move move Cody Ford into guard. I could see Pert, Cleveland, or Taylor being some late round developmental guys. Again, another name that's coming up in the chat here. Trey Adams and Kelvin Throckmorton both didn't look great to me, didn't move well, ran really poorly. And it's kind of crazy. 2 years ago, Trey Adams was, going into that season as a prohibitive top 5 pick overall, had some weird injury issues, and now just has really fallen pretty dramatically. So interesting to see his path. Looking at some of the interior guys, real shame. A lot of people love Lloyd Cushenberry, pulled a hamstring on his first 40. Shame that he wasn't able to do a lot of other things. I think he would have moved really well in the drill. So it's just a shame to see that. John Runyon Jr. looked like an athlete. Obviously, everybody knows his dad, John Runyon, longtime Philadelphia Eagle, dominant player. Explosive jumps, moved well. Probably more guard than tackle, but looked really good. Mike is bringing it up in the chat here. Cesar Ruiz looked great. Just a stellar athlete, above average across the board, solid scores everywhere. John Simpson, really big and long for a guard, and 34 reps with really long arms, just a powerful dude. And then I got to bring up my man, Netani Muti from Fresno State, 44 bench reps. And the man ate a 10 by 10 In-N-Out burger with 10 beef patties and 10 slices of cheese. You got to respect a man who's willing to put in that kind of work. Another interior guy maybe on the negative side, Nick Harris has just continued to kind of fall back, measured really small, tested poorly. If you're going to be on the smaller side at center, you got to at least show your athletics. So to measure small and test poorly was really, really rough. So, just a shame on that side of things for a guy who was graded really well at times and had a rough Senior Bowl, got pushed around a lot, tested really poorly here. Going to be interesting to see what his path is. So I thought the offensive lineman groups as a whole were really solid. I was pleased with how they looked as a group. The top end of the tackle class is special. I know a lot of Bills fans are not excited about the idea of offensive tackle at pick 22. I don't think it's an accident that we're seeing these top 4 guys show the way they did, the film that the way they have, and that you're hearing McDermott and Bean talk about the possibility of sliding forward into guard. I don't know that offensive tackle is at the top of my list for pick 22, but if those top 3 receivers and top 2 defensive ends are gone, I think it's more in play than what a lot of fans are thinking. And I can't lie, if you're telling me that we have a chance that Cody Ford's over at left guard with Deion Dawkins, and on the right side it's John Feliciano and Tristan Wirfs, or John Feliciano and Mekhi Becton, I'm not going to be mad. So, it's something that I don't think is plan A or even plan B or plan C, but I do think that there's a scenario where the board falls in a way that one of these guys could be the pick at 22. So a lot of things can change between now and then. Ron's bringing it up here in the chat that, obviously free agency can change that altogether. I tweeted out earlier my excitement about Brian Bulaga being kind of talked about as not coming back to Green Bay. I think he's the perfect kind of plug-and-play veteran that you could plug in day one as an upgrade and still at 31 years old get a solid 3 or 4 years out of at right tackle. I think he can be that kind of guy. And then Ty and Sek, he can just be a really nice high-end swing tackle luxury. Things could change pretty dramatically there. So obviously we'll see between now and then if we don't make a move dramatically at free agency. I think everybody can read into that pretty strongly that offensive tackle is in play in those top 2 round picks. So curious to see, and we'll find out a lot more about that here early in March. All right, let's move on to the fun and exciting position here. Running back is a position that, anybody who listens to the show or hears me rant in the premium Slack channel, I'm not a huge fan of high investments in running back. But I 100% agree that running back is a major need for this team this year. I don't think there's a great free agent class. There's some names that have been talked about getting released. Obviously, that can change if Todd Gurley and David Johnson and Devontae Freeman get released and you add that into some other names. I don't think we're going to be spending at the Melvin Gordon end of the pool. I think Derrick Henry is going to get transition tagged back to Tennessee. So I don't know that we see us spending big money, but I do think we bring in more than one running back this year. I think we bring in a value running back from a free agency standpoint, and then several guys showed out tonight. So the presumptive top four, I think that you hear people talk about going in were, DeAndre Swift from Georgia, J.K. Dobbins from Ohio State, Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, and Cam Akers from Florida State. I think there are various orders of that. I think more people had Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift as their one or two, but I've seen any of them as potential top four guys. Jonathan Taylor was phenomenal tonight. 4.39 40 at 226 pounds. Really explosive. I think kind of solidified his top spot there. Was pretty solid at everything. Had a couple solid jumps. His pass catching was fine. I don't think that's ever going to be his strength, but he looked okay, and I thought looked positive. Maybe not as good as Akers or Swift, but good. J.K. Dobbins didn't run. I would love to have seen that. I think he's going to be a really high-end athlete from that standpoint. Cam Akers was just crazy smooth, ran a 4.47 40, solid in everything, wasn't below average in anything, looked phenomenal in the option route drill, destroyed the Deuce Staley drill, looked easily the smoothest in that one going through there. So I thought Cam Akers maybe didn't test as well as Jonathan Taylor, but I think he looked as good or better than him in all the drills. And I could easily see a team having Cam Akers as their RB1, and I think it would be valid for him to be an RB1 on more than one team's board. My note for DeAndre Swift was he was solid and checked the box. I thought that he caught the ball well. He tested fine in everything. I don't know that he was off the charts or had any of the wow moments of Jonathan Taylor or anything like that, but caught the ball really well and looked good. So there's your top four in Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, and then we didn't see Dobbins tonight. Once you get outside of there, it's hard to argue that A.J. Dillon didn't have the best day out of everybody, even testing better than those top four guys. His film is not on par with them. He did not put himself into a first round or top tier running back discussion. He didn't look great catching the ball, but the man destroyed the testing at the 40. You're talking about a guy who weighed in at 247 pounds. He then ran a 4.52 40 with a 41-inch vertical and a 10-foot 11-inch broad jump. He almost broad jumped 11 feet at 247 pounds. For anybody who follows me knows I'm a huge fan of Ken Platt's work over at RAS. He invented the relative athletic score. What a relative athletic score is where you take each metric and just compare it to everyone else who's ever ran a 40. So, when you have a time like that, it goes into where each of those things fall. Ron and I were talking about it in the Slack channel that A.J. Dillon's 41-inch vertical was in the 98.3 percentile out of all running backs ever. In the 98th percentile, only 1.7% of running backs ever out-jump that, and that doesn't take the 247 pounds into account. That's everybody else who weighs 206 and 195 and 211, and he was in the 98th percentile at 247 pounds. It's just bananas. So he's the exact same idea as some of the guys yesterday where it's like, oh, I guess I need to go back and watch a little more film here. So he's today's Chase Claypool. He's a player that, teams liked. The film is not in that top tier. So it's the same idea as Claypool. Claypool didn't all of a sudden make himself a first-round pick, but it certainly solidified any potential that you saw. A.J. Dillon is not a top-tier running back, but there's some teams who are going to go back and refresh that film after what they saw here. And, I'm in that same boat. I'm going to go back and look. I know he's the guy that Eric and I had talked about as probably a 5th or 6th round pick. He's now the kind of guy with this athletic profile. If you get there into the beginning of day 3, I don't think he pushed himself into day 2, but you get now into the early stages of round 4, it's going to be hard to pass that up when you're talking about some of these other running backs. And that I could certainly see him putting his name right there after that top 6. I've talked all the time about, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Zach Moss being that 5th and 6th running back. On the downside, I'm going to give a caveat here that a report came out from Adam Schefter that Zach Moss tweaked his hammy doing the vertical and still tried to push through doing the other drills and running because he wanted to compete. He did not test well. He didn't jump well, and then he ran a 4.740, and that's a concerning level. I talk a lot about checking the box. I talked about it with receivers last night that you don't have to run a 4.3, but as long as you run between a 4.45 and a 4.6, you're fine at receiver. Well, running back is probably closer to between a 4.5 and a 4.65. As perfect example, Devin Singletary ran a 4.67 last year. That's at the very high end of where things are at. If you tested the 4.7s or above, that's a concern. That's going to be a challenge to be able to go back. So I'm going to give the caveat that if Moss runs a solid time at the pro day, even a 4.61, just a regular time and tests out well, then I think this checks out that the injury was, there and impacting him, and everybody will move along. Eric's been a big fan of his film. He showed a lot of potential in, what he was doing. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that we've got a shot that's all it was. But it wasn't a great day from that standpoint. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, same exact note as DeAndre Swift. Solid, check the box, look good, catching the ball, no concerns. He was average or better at everything, wasn't exceptional at anything. So we'll kind of see where that goes. One name that was not on my radar that flashed for me several times was James Robinson out of Illinois State. Really high-end explosion test. All his jumps were really impressive. And I noticed him several times in the route running drills and doing the footwork drills. So a guy that I can't lie, I have not watched any Illinois State All-22 film. So I am going to dig in and go take a look. And that's really what days like this are today for. I have no idea if that means that James Robinson is a draftable prospect, but he's a guy I made a note on that if I noticed him that many times running these drills and then I checked the testing and it all checked out, that's what days like today should be, is to go back and dig in and be like, hey, is this a guy that we should be kicking around in those later rounds? So again, AJ Dillon, really put up a historic numbers when you talk about power and speed score with his speed versus his weight. Jonathan Taylor, I thought, looked really explosive, maybe a little bit left to be desired from a pass catching standpoint. I thought Cam Akers maybe had the best all-around day when you take into account, good scores, above average and everything, great route running, and probably the best drills out of any of the running backs. Both DeAndre Swift and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were good. Nothing special, but really solid. Rough day for Zach Moss, but maybe an injury, and a surprise name of James Robinson from Illinois State coming out from the lower levels. So some nice names for the Bills as well. I don't want to see either of those first two picks being a running back, but any of those top-end guys that make it to that third round, I'd be really excited. And, with some of the performances the Cam Akers or Jonathan Taylor had, if they end up being the pick at 54, I could probably get my head around it after a while. So great job in the chat tonight. It was a lot of fun. We'll see you guys tomorrow night for day 3 and then another one on Sunday with day 4. This has been a great time being able to recap each of those shows. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.